Mr. C. Okay, that person is me, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're starting off with Daily Trust. Now, the meeting between organized labor and the federal government representatives on the removal of fuel subsidies has ended, or, well, as no agreement was reached. So it was a bit of a stalemate, really.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. So following the president's announcement on Inauguration Day that the fuel subsidy regime had ended, we then saw an increase, an amendment to the prices by the NNPCL. Now
Mm-hmm.
remember, the NNPCL has been for the last, say, 24 months at the minimum, the primary sole importer of PMS into the country. And because they bring in the PMS solely, they're able to determine the price. So they brought out the price list, which differs from state to state. Now, the differences in the prices per state are reflective of the cost of trucking the product to those states. So one of the questions that will probably arise in the minds of some of the listeners this morning is, why are we still trucking? What happened to our pipelines? But that's a story for another day. So following the increase in the prices from 185 naira per liter to 488 naira per liter in Lagos, we saw an increase. So we first saw an increase in the number of cars trying to buy petrol. Then we saw that quantum decrease once the announcement had come. Now, labor representatives of labor now met with representatives of the federal government, and it would appear that the objective of labor is to go back to the previous status quo. So, what was the previous status quo? The previous status quo was petrol was 185 naira per liter. I'm sorry to break it to them today. That ship has sailed. And reading the body language disposition of this present administration, it will be very interesting for them to go back. Now, the bigger question is this: the previous administration had made provisions for the fuel subsidy to run up until the 30th of June this year. Now, we're a month early and it's already gone. So, the money that was allocated for the month of June, is it going to be deployed to other sectors of the economy? And first of all, what is that sum? To what sectors of the economy will it be deployed to? Now, more importantly, is the NNPCL wasn't transparent or hasn't been transparent enough. How did we get to 488? What is the scientific methodology that was used in arriving at that sum? Why is it 488? Why is it not 476? Why is it not 523? So, in this era of increased transparency and accountability, the NNPCL, along with the regulatory agencies, needs to indicate how we got there. Now, previously, we had regulatory authorities determining the price. Now we have NNPCL, which is supposed to be a market participant, a market competitor, unilaterally fixing the price. Now, is that proper? Because in a sense now, NNPC is a monopoly. Let's put aside the fact that it is owned primarily by the Nigerian government. It is a monopoly. Now I understand we have a Consumer Protection Council Commission. Now, are they looking into this? I'm not sure we have a competition commission just yet. Should a market participant have the power to unilaterally fix the price of an essential product? These are questions the federal government and its agencies need to answer. But in the short term, this is where we are. The meeting was adjourned. There were no clear-cut agreements or conclusions reached, and the meetings will continue on subsequent days. Now, what I expect Labour to be championing now is we're here because we always knew this day was going to come. It's just come a bit sooner than we expected. Now, what are the measures that will be put in place to cushion the impact of this subsidy removal? Because let's be very clear, transport costs have skyrocketed. It's only a matter of time before we begin to see adjustments to the prices of foodstuffs, It's only a matter of time before we begin to see adjustments, upward adjustments to the prices of goods and services. Now, for the local small and medium scale enterprise that primarily depends on petrol powered generators to power their businesses, we will see some of them go out of business if they are unable to adjust to the new realities. And for those that are able to adjust to the new reality, we will see increased costs that will be passed on ultimately to the final consumer. Now, what does this portend for people who live in areas where electricity supply is literally non-existent or nothing to write home about? It then increases the burden on them to power their homes with alternative power sources. So it's a far-reaching it's a far-reaching problem with many hydra-headed facets, and let us hope that the federal government is able to put in place measures to cushion it. And one readily comes to mind very quickly: the $800 million bank loan from the World Bank. Now that we've ended the fuel subsidy regime, even though we had question marks about how that money was going to be deployed, let's start to see whether we can deploy part of it first and see what effect it has on the people it's deployed to.
I'd just also like to add to that. So in learning that the price per liter is now, minimum 480 naira per liter, are we sure that we are fully off subsidy? Because the price, internationally, I know, like in America, is about $1.26. So assume it's about like $1. If we look at the price of the official rate of $1, the price of black market rate of $1 is still far higher than the rate that we have now. So I would like a situation where the government, NMPs, whoever, tells us conclusively, that we're completely off subsidy or we're partially off subsidy. Let's even know what the plan is, because potentially the price of petrol would still, increase or decrease depending on whatever the exchange rate is, which really affects the price of the product.
So, Gbubemi, very interesting point, very quickly. At 488 or even at 550, we're still below the price of petrol. From We're surrounded by neighbors and we have the cheapest price. So I want to believe this is not even the final price. So this price is not fixed.
This is for NNPC though. It's outlets, right?
Yes. So if other people come in
Mm-hmm.
and are able to bring it at a cheaper price, fantastic. So that where we're headed to is what obtains in other countries, where you can have 5 different outlets offering 5 different prices, and then the final consumer decides who he wants to patronize.
Exactly.
But this is unlikely to be the final price.
Uh-huh.
All right. From WhatsApp, Saratu says, since they've increased fuel price through the removal of subsidies, what happens to workers' salaries? Will they increase it too? For how long will we suffer this hardship? They should have fixed the old refineries and built new ones before the removal. May God give our leaders the grace and the brains to think well. Okay, let's move on to this one from Ajayi. Ajayi says, the president has started on wrong footing with this removal of the subsidy. It's going to unleash further hardship on the masses with a ripple effect on prices of goods and transportation, which has been seen now. And Otun says, Andrew, the NNPC fixed the price for selling at their own retail outlets. Others will adjust theirs around this range. All right, let's move on to the next story. But you can still let us know what your thoughts are, of course. 0809 444 981. You can also tweet at Smooth981 and catch the live stream as well. Now, the All Farmers Association of Nigeria has called on the president to holistically address the farmer herder conflicts that are happening across the country in order to achieve food security.
So, in the last maybe 4, 6 years, we've had an increase in the conflicts between farmers and herders. And, this has caused a lot of problems regarding products of farmers because, for example, we've had cattle rearers, the herders, invading the land of arable farmers, and their cattle eating the crops. And the real reason, one of the core reasons why we've had this situation where the herders have intruded into farmland is because partly ecological changes happening around the north central, the northeast, yeah, with the drying up of the Chad Basin, reduction in water sources around those areas. So the farmers have had to move around a lot more. We've seen a greater incursion of them into even the south, which wasn't as prominent as before. So essentially, they are moving for survival in that sense. And in their quest to ensure that they continue to herd their cattle, provide resources for their cattle, they've also, um, encroached on the land of farmers, which has posed a problem. Now, the core problem here is that, from the farmer's perspective, the cattle headers are unbothered about encroaching into their land. As far as they're concerned, their main argument is that their cattle need to feed, their cattle need to survive. And however this happens is not their problem. And we recall that this was brought several times to the attention of the previous president, Buhari, um, who I think at a point was the patron of the Métis Allah Cattle Headers Association. I'm not quite sure on that, but
No, he was.
He was, exactly. And body language, speech from him was always more, appeared to be more on the cattle header side. So there was never been any conclusive uh, solution, to these problems. And hopefully with the new president now, there may be, some reaches. But, above all of these problems, like I said, the ecological problems, even with flooding and things like that, which have also affected farmland, so affected both the herders and the arable farmers as well. So these are problems that we would expect ministries like Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Water Resources to attend to as well. I'm not sure whether anything has happened on this part. But it's be very, very important for this to be looked into. Ultimately, we need to, I know at a point there was a bill on farm settlements. I'm not quite sure what has happened to that. I know there was a lot of pushback from some states. A few states agreed. I don't know whether that has eventually, Ruga, I don't know whether that has eventually taken off, but these cattle headers need to be settled in some way, to be able to limit their encroachment on the farmers' lands.
So I want to piggyback on what you just said. Yes, they need to be settled, but we must remember, we must understand that cattle rearing is a private business activity.
Very true.
And every business activity will come with costs. If they're not prepared to meet or adequately cover the cost of engaging in that activity, they should not be encouraged to continue their unlawful and illegal acts. And the law enforcement agencies need to step up their game and protect the farmers. The farmers are also engaged in lawful, legitimate, private business activities, and the land that the cattle usually descend on and destroy is what they literally live on to survive. So the cattle rearers need to copy modern day best practices, which will ultimately lead to ranching.
Exactly.
And they should bear that cost themselves, unless the government is inclined to subsidize partly that business activity. Because when we think about it, how much taxes do they pay? How much revenue comes into the federal government treasury from cattle rearing? So we should get our priorities right.
Right.
On WhatsApp, Ade says, on the removal of subsidies, are we looking at what Dangote refinery can do to get refined crude at a cheaper rate? NNPC supplies Dangote crude and the refined product is bought at an agreed cheaper rate in Naira without the cost of shipping. And Yinka says the president has done well with this removal. Let's face it once and for all. There's no point postponing the D-Day, and everyone knew this day would come. Now, as far as we know, the last government didn't plan for it. So my question is, those saying the president started on wrong footing, where should we get the money to fund the subsidy? Even if it's 50%, where should we get it? Take a loan, because we've been borrowing to pay subsidy and it absolutely does not make sense. Abbas says the former President Buhari should have taken this bold step when he signed the PIB into Act, which automatically removed subsidy, but we went ahead and spent over 3 trillion naira on it again. You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Stay with us. Freshly Pressed continues.
Hi people, my name is Praise, and if you want good music, stay tuned to Smooth 98.1. You are an orchestra. Watching you move, it's like listening to a symphony of body parts directed by a maestro. When you walk, it is like watching a G clef stroll across an octave accented by a C sharp. When you talk, the cadence of your voice is a tenor saxophone, making love to a cello at perfect pitch. And you are so smooth. That's why we keep it here on 98.1. This is Justin EJ, signing out. Music is life, and life is music. Here on Smooth 98.1. Nobody when you said it. Don't touch that dial.
It's freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1. We're looking at the news stories making the headlines across the country. 0809 444 981. That is the WhatsApp number. You can also tweet at Smooth981 or catch the live stream up on our YouTube channel. Just search Smooth981 and you can let us know what your thoughts are. From a Daily Trust, the CBN has devalued the naira to 631 naira to the dollar from 461 naira 6 kobo, and this is the price at which it's sold at the importers and exporters window.
Okay, so thank you, Zibby. So, over the years, we've witnessed a growing discrepancy between the official forex rates and the parallel forex rates. And one of the consequences of this widening gap is the fact that foreign direct investment has dropped because the foreign investors cannot wrap their heads around the absurdities that they're literally constrained to bring in money at the official rate, but when it's time to take it out, they may be constrained to take it out at the parallel rate, if when it's even possible. And one of the promises of the new president was that he was going to take steps to harmonize the forex rates, and he did indeed in his inauguration speech direct the central bank to start taking steps towards harmonizing the rates. This is one of the consequences. Now, previously, the naira had exchanged for the sum of 461 naira would have gotten you a US dollar as the official rate last week. But now, it's now 630 naira. Now, what the president is trying to do is to reduce that discrepancy, because even the foreign monetary institutions have advised that we streamline the gap so that it's not more than 5%. The differential should not be more than 5%. Now, what does this mean? There are a number of consequences. So we have Nigerians who are desirous of traveling abroad for further studies. Now, previously, they would have gotten the greenback at 461 naira. Now they have to budget 630. Now, the difference between 630 and 750 is about 120 naira right now. So, and from the reports, everyone who bid for the dollar at 630 had their demands fully met. So, going forward, we may then see a reduced demand or appetite for dollars gotten from the black market rate. Because when you think about it, it would only be extreme urgencies or extreme measures that would make you patronize them. Now, another consequence is this. Now that 630, it's a welcome sign to foreign investors that look, we're taking the necessary steps to reshape the Nigerian economy and get it back on track. We've removed the subsidy. We're harmonizing the forex rates. We're going to make business competitive. We're going to make it easy to do business in Nigeria. And with all of these measures, we should see in the near term to midterm some increased investments, especially from foreign sources. Now, why do we need these foreign investments? We need them because the government simply cannot fund everything that is required to be done in Nigeria. And these investments will jumpstart the economy because we need to get GDP growth rates above population growth rates. That's one. And two, if we're going to make the progress we want to make, and position Nigeria properly by 2050, we need to start taking these painful steps now. So yes, they're painful, and we can liken these things to a series of injections, especially for someone who has malaria. Take the injections now. You might feel some discomfort, but in the midterm, you'll be fine. And you'll be glad that you did take the injections. So there's no good time to start all of this, but we started and we must continue.
Okay, let's go on to the messages coming through. Pastor Dapo says, for sure, inflation will definitely be a contentious issue with this subsidy removal. Nobody wants to be left out in the cold, so the petrol market is already projecting replacement costs. The math of the pricing can be confusing, but at the end of the day, we're just going to have to engage in a survival period of economic wants because there is no cause without an effect. Emeka says, let the herders emulate modern methods of rearing their cows as against moving into people's lands and houses. This is impunity. And another message from Abbas says, the government is helping private businesses. The aviation sector is heavily been helped by government. Even farmers get a lot of support from them. So it's not wrong to support the herders since there's always an issue with the farmers. And Nee says this is a sign of policy consistency. Petrol 500 versus $631. This dollar rate makes sense with the fuel price. It's a good sign. And right, let's go on to the next headline, I beg your pardon. This one comes from Premium Times. Now, a bill seeking equal rights for women, men, and persons who live with disabilities has reached second reading at the Senate. Now, it was first introduced in 2021, but there were some objections from some senators who believed it was against the Islamic perspective and sociocultural norms.
So the bill was represented at this last session, and one of the senators, in making a comment, said that he preferred that the bill should be the gender equity bill rather than gender equality bill. It's interesting that there's provision for gender equity and consideration for disabled persons in the Constitution. Let me just quickly read that section that I found. So, Section 242 of the Constitution says the citizen of Nigeria of a particular community, ethnic group, place of origin, sex, religion, or political opinion shall not, by reason only that he such a person, be subjected either expressly by or in the practical application of any law enforced in Nigeria or any executive or administrative action of the government to disabilities or restrictions to which citizens of Nigeria of other communities, ethnic groups, places of origin, sex, religions, and or political opinions are not made subject to. There are a few other subsections under that part. So this bill is a welcome bill. Interestingly, the if the bill is eventually passed on the Senate and signed into law by the president, it will we will see a few we should see a few changes in how we reflect on a few other things like, for example, child marriage. There will be impacts on that. um, Family planning as well. There will be impacts on that. Generally, aspects of society and life that require equality for men and women. There would also be consideration in terms of giving positions to women or disabled people. So currently, I'm not sure if it's a law. I know President Obasanjo, at his time, started with a 30% minimum requirement for having women on the ministers, amongst the ministers. I think I think Yar'Adua maintained that. I'm not sure if the others actually did. I know Buhari definitely didn't do that. So with the passing of this kind of law, I'm not sure we would need to have that kind of requirements, because people will be considered based on the quality of their experience, of their skill, rather than having to set some form of affirmative action that should benefit them. This would also require a lot of other institutions, companies, to make their premises disability friendly. So I think it was a few weeks ago when we were talking about disability, we noted the fact that the average bank has no
Mhm.
facility for people on wheelchairs to come in. If you go to many residences in Lagos that are more than one story, all they have are stairs, no elevators. So if someone who's coming to see you is on a wheelchair, there's absolutely no way they're going to get into the building. So the bill will also have impact on those kind of situations as well.
All right.
So very quickly, I want to throw in something on the previous story. Now that the naira has appreciated or depreciated, actually correct term is depreciated, we might see a further increase in the price of petrol because everything is denominated in US
Yes.
dollar terms.
Right.
So I'll be extremely shocked and surprised not to find an increase in the price of petrol.
Are we ever going to catch a break?
Like from Daily Trust, the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria in Ogun State, House of Assembly, have declared an indefinite strike with effect from today. Now, this strike action follows the state government's inability to implement the consolidated legislative salary structure.
Okay, so thank you very much, Zibby. This is a story that is I find very ludicrous. Now, the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria in Ogun State, why are they striking now? When did this consolidated legislative salary structure come into effect? What have they done about it before now? And why is the result to strike the first and primary option for a lot of trade associations, trade unions? That is not the way to go. Is there any evidence of dialogue with the legislative? So there is a state legislative commission. Have you spoken to them? Now, under the constitution, the legislature, both at federal and state levels, should have a first line charge on the treasury. Now, if that is the case, why are we having this dispute? So there's a bit more to this than meets the eye, and it's a 3-day warning strike. So my question to them is, at the end of the 3 days, if you're not paid, right, because you've locked the assembly for 3 days, at the end of 3 days, you're not paid, what's the plan?
What is the plan? Okay, well, that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your messages. And special thanks to our analysts for joining us this morning, braving everything to be here with us. So thank you, Mr. C and Gbubemi.
Thank you, Zibby.
You're welcome.
Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.
The headlines, the stories.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. It's so cold. Mr. C, come on.